It is so wonderful to be here with all of you. And I have an exciting topic today. But in order for me to deliver this topic, I need your full focus, your full attention. And I would love your feedback too. Let me know if there's any confusion, if you have any questions. I want to see where you are. But this message isn't something that's conveyed to you, conveyed to your brain, to your mind, to the intellect. Right? The point of words, it's like Guruji's products, right? It's not the vitamins and the minerals necessarily that's, delivering the outcome. It's just the carrier. Right? It doesn't matter what I say, what Guruji says, what any of us say. It's just the carrier. Right? Truth is conveyed, it's not spoken. Truth is something that you understand, that you integrate into your being through actually experiencing truth. Through the direct confrontation with truth. By drinking it, tasting it, being a part of it. It's not something that, again, you don't read about it. You don't get a degree in it. It's not something anybody can explain to you. And it's not something that you can even explain away yourself. It is beyond explanation. Because explanations are old ideas, and truth is always new. That's why sometimes you'll have teachers who sound like they contradict themselves, or they might speak in parables, because there's no real way to talk about truth. But somehow, if they can confuse you enough, if they can get past your BS, your belief systems, right? Your thought process, right? The subconscious and the conscious mind. Get to the very heart of the matter, so to speak. Then it's delivered to you. Right? The words are just the carrier, and that's it. But you have to understand how difficult it is to explain truth. Even if the words are just a carrier, right? If it's even put into words in the first place, it's such a limitation on what truth really is. Because what are words? Words are a construction made by humanity, right? And each one of us has a different idea of what a certain word means based upon our own experiences and our own relationships with that word. So I might be conveying one message to you, and based upon whatever's going on in your conscious and your subconscious, unconsciously, right? You're not getting the right message, the correct message, the true essence. Because it's going through a filtration system. Right? It's being cut up and chopped and segmented into different parts of your mind according to whatever filing system you have in place. It's segmenting, this is what this means because this is my relationship with that term. Right? I know what God is because this is my experience with God. Right? I haven't had anything beyond this experience, so I can't understand what's beyond that experience. But I can relate it to this. This is my reference point. So I require that reference point in order to intellectually understand what's being spoken to me. And like I said, it is not an intellectual phenomenon when truth is understood, when it's conveyed, it's not through the intelligence of the mind. Right? You can have the most educated person in the world and the least educated person in the world. Right? Gopal is a great example of truth. Because despite not having gone to school for even a full day in his entire life, without being properly educated in doctrine and philosophy and religious texts, through his direct confrontation with truth, he can understand and convey that message in his own terms. But it's something that he can share with others. But you can have someone who supposedly has the greatest understanding of the teachers, all the greatest saints, all the greatest enlightened beings in the whole entire world, and they'll have no idea. But they can talk a lot, and they can impress you with their words. They can quote a lot of things. But to give you that taste, they have nothing. So I want to talk about the difference between belief and truth. You might think that belief is a very good thing to have. You know, I believe God is real. I believe in love. I believe in goodness. Whatever the belief is. But the very existence of belief, the very root of belief, the stem cause of belief, is based upon doubt. The fact that you require belief in the first place proves that there is doubt there. Because what is belief? You only need belief when you require a leap of faith in something. When you don't have the experience of that thing, you need some sort of belief to tell you that something is real. Belief and faith are different. You can have faith in something, but that's knowing beyond doubt that it's true, because you've tasted it, you know. That's faith. Right? Belief, for example, Galileo. Right? It was originally believed that the earth was the center of the universe and everything revolved around the earth. Right? So according to that belief system, it should require that everything, that we are the center of the universe. That the sun, the planets, everything revolves around us. But what happened is when Galileo actually saw, when he observed the sky, the sun, the stars, he saw that we are not, in fact, the center of the universe. Actually, the sun is the center of our solar system. We're revolving around the sun. But what happens is that belief system that the earth is the center of the universe, right, that was also very much connected with the Catholic Church. Right? And so if that was wrong, if that one belief was wrong, then what else is wrong? Everything that that belief is rooted or connected with must also be wrong. The very foundation, the requirement for the earth to be the center of the universe, for us to be so important, has to be wrong. And so to cover up the doubts, you need to build upon it with one fictitious story after another fictitious story in order to support that belief. But what happens is when Galileo saw that the sun was the center of our solar system, that we in fact revolved around it as well as all the other planets, that wasn't a belief. That wasn't a new idea that we created because we weren't sure of something. That was truth. That's an experience of truth. To bear witness to it. You don't need belief that it's the center when you can see that it's the center. You don't need belief that the sun exists if you see it every day. It's not like, I believe in the sun, therefore it's there. No. The sun is going to be there whether you believe in it or not. That's truth. And to understand that, you need to actually partake in it. You need the direct experience of truth. So you need the direct experience with light, with the sun, in order to understand and know that it is there and it exists. That is not belief. But in the end, belief becomes a hindrance to your growth. Because with belief, there's always a requirement of one expectation over another. You always know that according to this belief, I expect this to be the outcome, and everything else I reject. Believe it or not, doubt. It's funny, believe it or not. Doubt, skepticism, actually plays, at least at the beginning, a very fundamental and important role in your spiritual growth. Because what happens when you doubt? What happens when you question things? It opens the door for other possibilities. If I question the reality of this thing, this idea, this belief, if I question its existence, whether it's real, it opens the avenue for something else that belief would originally reject. That belief does not encompass. If you have a particular belief, you have a particular set of ideas about life, a very specific way that life is to be lived. According to this belief, this is how this is supposed to go. But when you question the belief, your scope, your vision, your awareness increases. It sharpens the mind. Because then you start thinking, well then, what's real? I thought this was real. I was so sure that this was real, but now I'm having doubts that this is real. And it could be the best belief in the world. Like I said, you can have the most amazing, beautiful ideas about life, about what the purpose, what your meaning is. But even then, that's a limitation. Even that, even the most exalted, most beautiful thoughts, most beautiful state of mind in the world is a limitation. So to question a belief, especially one that's been so deep-rooted in your consciousness for so long, which I know many of you have, it opens your eyes to what's out there. Because truth isn't thought. It's not perceived. If you look at like a light, when it shines like on a diamond, right? What happens is when the light passes through the diamond, it refracts. So then you'll have this kaleidoscope of other colors, right? You'll see many, many different sides, many different visions of that light. But the actual light that it's coming from right? You don't see those colors. It's clear, right? You know it exists because it's bright, but that's it. The actual light itself, when it enters into the diamond and exits on the other side, when the light is bent, right? It's like the wavelengths just start separating and then you see all these colors. Does that mean that, because you see red, blue doesn't exist? No. Or does that make one color more correct than the other? No. Does that mean one color exists and one color doesn't exist? No. They all exist. If you're experiencing it, it's pretty clear it exists. But when you turn that light back to itself, right? The perception of color is erased. It ceases to exist. When you become absorbed in eternity, in divine consciousness, instead of individual consciousness of a person, right? You can imagine that people are the kaleidoscope effects of divine consciousness. Depending on what it passes through, right, you see a different reality of life, a different perceptual field, a different color, a different filter about life, a different persona or personality. But when that consciousness, when that perception is reflected back on itself, when that awareness is put back on awareness itself, right? When the perceiver is no longer the perceiver, but the one that does the perceiving. It's like, a big sunset. Right? When you are watching the sunset, you can see the sunset, right? And you can see how beautiful it is. It's the most beautiful thing, like all these beautiful colors, however many clouds there are, how it, reflects on the water. If you're by the ocean, it's beautiful. But when you are the sunset, you don't see that beauty. You are that beauty, but to understand what that is, right? You're not going to get that full understanding by just observing it. But that is the closest way you can get to truth, is through complete quiet observation, silence. But that true silence, when that becomes your reality, it's like you become that sunset. You don't see the rays of colors, right? You don't see, the beautiful portrayal of what it is. You just are that. But how do you explain that to somebody who's never been in that place? The reason why you have a spiritual teacher, an enlightened teacher, is because they can, through their own experiences with truth, right? You get a glimpse. You can watch it and observe it. You can taste it, right? They can give you direct experience with truth. But to fully understand truth, the only thing you can really do is just be as close to it as possible. But truth itself, it's like, experiences with truth, it's like drinking from the ocean, and then the full-on being of truth is dissolving into the ocean. It's like in order to experience truth, you have to go into the ocean, but when you enter into the ocean, you dissolve completely into it. But what happens? There's no you left to experience truth. Because it's a requirement for you to become a part of that ocean that you have to dissolve into it. Whatever you are, whatever that structure of you that's there, all the bindings of all beliefs and thoughts and patterns of life is going to be dissolved. That's why I say enlightenment is the scariest thing for everybody. Because everything that you are, everything that you've believed in, everything that you've held on to and wanted to be true disappears. And when you come back and you try and explain it to somebody, what truth is, what reality is, like imagine how difficult that must be if you weren't there to really experience it, because it's a requirement that you dissolve completely into it to the point in which there is no you left. How do you talk about it? There's no you to talk about it. But that's where intuition comes in. Intuition is the gap, right? It's the connecting force between the mind and the spirit. Right? That which actually partakes in truth. And you can talk about it all you want, but that doesn't mean anybody's going to understand it. That's why words will never convey what truth is, if you're focusing on the words. That's why when I'll start talking to somebody and then they'll be like, oh yeah, I get that. I understand it. Sometimes I lose interest in finishing the conversation because what they've done is they've immediately closed the door. The moment you say, I get it, I understand, that makes sense. Right? Intellectually, you're intellectualizing the whole thing. You're putting it through your own filing cabinet system of, I've heard this before. And so, according to how my filtration system is, how the mind is, whatever's running subconsciously, right, I'm able to compact that truth into a bite-sized portion, cut it up and fit it into my own rational thought. The moment it's fitting into your own rational thought that you think that's understood in words, right, you're not understanding it. The message isn't coming across. I could say the same words and someone could repeat the same thing back to me, but it's lost in translation somewhere. It never arrived to the end point. You say, God is love, and they're like, oh, I get it. That's the end of that. It's an end. It's an end to the conversation. It's an end to the query. It's an end to the search. A teacher isn't going to give you the answer for something. They're going to, hopefully, confuse your mind to the point in which you're so confused you don't know what to think anymore. And so your thoughts stop. So then, when they actually deliver truth, it just passes over the intellect altogether. It's like, Guruji says all the time, be like a child. Right? When you're here, it's not about, a child's not going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, according to this book I read once before. I understand that philosophy. No, they're just going to sit there and go like, it's curiosity, it's wonder. It's the wondrous part of the mind. Your being, your totality. It's the awe, the constant awe, the ceaseless wonder. Even when you reach enlightenment, that doesn't stop. The moment that stops, growth stops. You need to be in that state of endless and ceaseless wonder, of I both understand and I don't. Intuitively, I feel that that is truth, but I don't get it. I don't know how to word it. I don't know how to talk about it. I know it, but at the same time, it's new every time. It's always unfolding into something different, something unexpected, but it's still truth. It's unchanging. It has existed and it will always exist. But until you get to that point, right, how do you know? How do you know you've had an encounter with truth? How do you feel it out? If the mind can't rationalize it, how can you understand it? How can you integrate it and implement it? But again, that's also the rationale of the mind, to try and do it. The mind will always ask, how do I do that? But direct experience with truth is, I don't need to know how, I am doing that. It's like, how do you explain what color and light is to somebody who's never seen before, to a blind man? How do you talk about light and color? How would you describe red? It's the color of an apple. They've never seen an apple. What are the colors in a rainbow? They've never seen those colors. How would you describe it? Say, ooh, blue is like a cool color. What does that even mean? When you look at it, you feel cold? I don't understand. So you can understand the difficulty of someone who's experienced it, who knows that truth, to try and explain it to somebody who's never experienced it. The only way to show that person what truth is to give them the vision, the sight, to immerse themselves in that truth. I kind of want to do a little continuation of what we were talking about this morning, and I think it sinks in a lot with what Guruji is talking about, with your belief system, your BS, detoxification and absorption. And the first part of that is I want to talk about, because we left off talking about how the belief system is based upon a foundation of doubt. Right? So the very existence of a belief is required when you don't have true faith, when you don't have the actual experience of truth to say that this is something that I know exists without a doubt. Like the sun is going to rise tomorrow. I have faith in that because I've seen it rise every day. I don't need to believe in the sun rising. I know it's going to rise. But what happens in this life is that everything, from the point of being a very small child, right, we receive all this information through our senses, right? Through our taste, our sight, touch, smell, hearing. But there's one sense beyond that, which is the intuition, right? And it's when all of these senses fail that you really start using that sense of intuition. So what happens is when you get all these varieties of senses, you get these sensations, you get these experiences, this accumulative perceptual idea about reality based upon your experiences, your interactions with the world. If you want to go into past lives, whether that's real or not, go for it. But essentially you've developed this structure of reality. Everybody has a reference point, right? This smell I can associate with this. And I can associate that if I smell strawberry, then this is what the smell, where the smell is coming from, this is what it's going to look like, this is what it will feel like to me, right? This is what the color is, this is what it will, everything. Everything has a foundation and a structure, and it's all connected to each other. And using all those senses, whatever perception that we've conceived through all these senses, we then use that to make assumptions about the world, about reality. We create belief systems. Right? Guruji is like, the Buddha told these people God existed and these people God didn't exist. Ultimately, the existence of God is a belief system. It is an idea. Idea conceived by the mind. And that's it. The mind doesn't have to believe that God exists. Through the direct experience, you know God exists. But the God that we've created is a persona, it's a personality, it's this image, right? So many, the media has portrayed even God as a man in white robes sitting in a cloud with a long beard pointing lightning bolts at people, right? So it's clear that we have ideas, maybe not necessarily that idea, but we have ideas of what God is. So much so that we can almost say that God is like this entity, right? We could call the God a creator, but then if the God has this image of the creator, if you believe in God as the creator, then who created the creator? Because the very foundation that there is a creator requires that something should create the creator. Otherwise, then your whole concept, your whole belief system on the idea of what creation is, that creation is possible, that there's a creator for creation, then that whole concept has to fall apart. It will break away. So the mind can't intellectually understand these things. So both points, yes, they're both correct. There is a God and there is not a God. Because what we've conceived God to be is not accurate. Right? It's that clear light shining on the crystal, refracting all these different aspects of that light. Right? In this light, God exists, in this light, God doesn't exist. But the truth is unchanging. The truth is that clear light. But that's not through the thought process, not through the sensorial. That can only be approached and felt through the intuitive faculties of the individual, of the soul. It's when all these sensorial aspects of your being fail, when your hopes and dreams of life fail you, when, you expect something and that expectation doesn't come to fruition, when all these desires that you've accumulated, and one desire only transforms into another desire. But when it's focused in the sensorial world, what's going to happen is it's going to fall away, right? You think that, life and pleasure and everything is about, maybe it's about family, maybe it's about money, maybe it's about success, having a big house. And when you have that and it doesn't give you that intense satisfaction, that deep feeling of peace that you thought it would, when that fails you, when the sensorial plane fails you, when you've gotten everything you dreamt of, everything that you wanted, everything that you thought would make you happy, and that fails you, that's when intuition starts working. That's when you start pushing the boundaries of your belief systems, when you start pushing the boundaries of your own thoughts, your own structures of the world, and you start feeling out truth. But it's not done through the intellectual mind. It's not perceived, per se, through the thoughts. It is felt through the second attention, through your intuition. And it's really only when those belief systems, those structures start to fail you. When do people, suddenly get involved in the spiritual path? When they go through some really traumatic events a lot of the times. Or when they've thought that this is what life is, and then they realize, that's it. That's all life is. There has to be something more. That's when people really start looking. When they really start seeking. What is that? That's when the structures, your beliefs, your concept of reality fails you. So don't go back to it. Right? If you don't If you're a smoker and you don't want to smoke anymore, you don't surround yourself with people who smoke. Right? To get rid of an old thought pattern, an old habit, an old idea, you have to crush it, right? You have to completely obliterate it and then start something new, different. And follow it thoroughly until it becomes part of you, until it becomes integrated into your being. It's kind of like, if you're building this house, right, you have a structure set in place, like this is my reality, this is my home, this is where I live, this is how things are, right? You start laying the cement, and when it starts drying, right, that's kind of like, you have these beliefs, these thoughts, like, this behavior and how you are interacting and approaching life. And then the thing that seals the deal is the conviction in your mind that this is true. It's that final deal, right? Is when, over a period of time, when you lay brick after brick, when you lay wall after wall, when you seal it with cement and let it dry, it's the conviction of the mind that says, this is truth. And it's not. So what happens, you need to apply some sort of force. You can't just use that same structure to build a new structure. You have to obliterate it. You can use the same materials to help rebuild a new form of reality, but you have to destroy the old structure. You have to destroy. It's kind of like when you have a rubber band. Right? When you start pulling on it, right, there's going to be resistance because it's everything you thought was to be, and there's nothing more than that, right? That's the rubber band. That's the scope, right? And you pull on it, and you pull on it, and eventually, through persistence, determination, willpower, and knowing through the intuitive faculties, you know that there's something more. You pull it long enough that it loses its resistance. But what happens is now it's stretched out of proportion and it can't return back to its original shape. So it's completely stretched out. It's not going to be like you ever have a hairband and you twist your hair up so many times in it that eventually it loses the elasticity. It becomes outstretched. It can stretch even beyond that. But it's not going to return back to that limited shape that it was. Your new idea of reality has expanded. Your world has expanded. And it's never going to reduce back again to that small reality of what it once was. That's impossible now. It's like a child. The child has like a small toy and everything, and you give it something that it might like better. Or you give an adult, $10 and they say, actually, do you want $100? Once they have a taste of $100, they don't want the $10 anymore. It has no value. Do you want $10 or $100? And once they understand the value of money, they know that $100 is way better than $10. Give me that. Right? When your world has expanded, it's like what Guruji's saying with the child. You give them the toy of the car, but when they get older and there's the real car, then they realize that, wow, that's so much better than this toy. That's actually going to take me somewhere, and I actually have to pick this up and take this somewhere. I'm transporting the car, and now the car's transporting me. What a great deal. Right? Your idea, your perception has altered. Your expanses of reality have just lost their structure, just like the elastic band. There's nothing to go back to. There's no reference point now. Right? Remember we're talking about reference points? How you refer to something in particular so that you can assess all the other things around you. Or you can understand the concept of God based upon this reference, based upon this spiritual text, based upon what you heard about from this person, based upon your experience. with a different church, with a different religion, with a different teacher, with a different way that you've been living your life, right? You have a specific reference point. And what happens is in the presence of enlightenment, right, you're stretched beyond the limits. You're not going to get answers. The only way you get answers is when you are in that stillness. When you are in that silence, when your thoughts conflict each other so much that there's no reference point left, right? This is what I was talking about with the Zen parables, right? Religions have attempted to do this, has attempted to conflict the mind, to conflict its reference points, its old structures, its old ideas. And Zen parables are like a perfect example. They're saying like, if a tree falls in the woods, and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? You don't know the answer to that. The point isn't to find the answer. But many people try because that's what the mind naturally wants to do. The mind wants to figure things out. The mind wants to put a structure and a definition on it and explain it away, and it loses all of its magic. Because then when it goes through the filtration of the mind, right, the truth isn't there anymore. It's been lost in translation. It's been chopped up and diced up and segmented and measured and sautéed. Right? That was the purpose of the Zen parables. Is to confuse yourself. To confuse the mind to the point in which it has no answer. And it has no question. When you're at that point when you have no desire, no more questions. If someone farts in a forest and no one's around to hear it, did it really happen? Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't fuzzy, was he? Right? Some of these parables you may have heard before, some of them might be new. You can't go back to where you once were now. But that was the purpose. Was that, if the tree falls down in the forest, what is sound? Right? The mind will go down this rabbit hole trying to figure out, well, okay, I have to figure out exactly what the definition of sound is. Is sound, then a vibration, or a sound only occur when it reaches the human ear? Right? The mind's going to explain it away in the best way that it knows how, to the point in which it loses its appeal. And what happens is, it's not the purpose to have an answer. That's why it seems like the enlightened always speak in parables, always speak in riddles, always answer you with another question. It's because, the whole concept that truth is conveyed, it's not spoken in words, right? So the way that you feel truth, when the sensorial faculties, they fail you, right, you have to find a new way to have purpose. You need to seek out what more is out there, and that's when you develop your intuition. And part of that process is when you have doubts, is when you have questions, because then you open up the scope for other possibilities. So when you have a doubt about a certain belief system, then you're opening the avenue that, maybe there's something that contradicts the belief system that I didn't consider before, but now it's a new avenue possibility because I have doubt. Faith happens when you develop your intuition. That's the next level. When you have faith, you know what truth is. That's not a belief system. That's the sun in the sky. But when you're going through this development, it's important that you question your own beliefs. And in many cases, you will have an enlightened master who will do that for you. Right? You will have someone like Guruji who, Your previous belief was that, enlightened people don't yell. Enlightened people are always like, ooh, life is so wonderful, I'm so happy, everything's peaceful, la-di-da, nicey, goody-goody. And then you're going to have that belief contradicted with somebody who's not goody-goody, who's going to rip you apart, who's going to tell you when you've done something wrong and make you feel bad about it. But that's how you start questioning the old belief system. That's how you start questioning the old structure. That's how it falls apart. You need a conflicting source. It's a Zen parable, a living Zen parable. Is you have one idea and there's something else that goes against that idea. When they merge, there's no idea. Matter and antimatter. When they collide, what's left? That's what happens. Thoughtlessness is not like forcing myself to stop thinking. I mean, that's going to be impossible because your life has been all about thinking, right? What happens is when you are with the Master, right, they present you with new ideas, new scopes of vision, new possibilities, a new level of awareness. This is what I meant by how awareness is so important, because you become aware of other realms of possibility. Your fate and fortune changes because your awareness increases and you're aware of what you're thinking, and you are aware of the very possibility that maybe I don't have to think that way. The very fact that you've been given the awareness that that can happen means that your fate and fortune shifts along with it. Your fate and fortune is defined by your perceptual reality, by this structure that you've lived in. It's the conviction that this is life. That's your fate and fortune, is the conviction, right? The subconscious mind that everything is filtering through, that's putting a tint, right? It's putting a weird fog towards everything you see. It's the filter that's coming through, right? It's a different refraction of reality, but it's not the exact reality. I don't know if you've ever tried, catching a butterfly, or if you've ever seen, like a cat hunt. I'm talking just like a domesticated cat, right? How they start stalking. This is I'm going to put you in that zone of what the stillness, how the intuitive faculties, they start working. Because in that moment, when you're trying to catch that butterfly, you can envision the butterfly as like that truth. Right, that small little satori, that small little glimpse at what reality really is. Right, the clear reality. When you're in that moment, right, you have to be still. Because that truth, that reality, that is so fragile. And at the same time, it's fragility, right? Seemingly fragility. Is its strength. Because you have to be zoned in. You have to be completely in the moment. Complete stillness. Right? If your thoughts are distracted and you're thinking about, what am I going to make for dinner? You're trying to catch a butterfly. It's not going to work out. Right? You have to be completely zoned in, and your perceptual field is no longer just limited to you. In that moment of stillness and silence, your perceptual field expands to your entire surroundings, your whole environment, to that very butterfly. That very butterfly becomes a part of your own awareness. Because you have to feel it out with the intuitive faculties. You have to feel it out to learn at what point in me approaching it is it going to fly away. At what point do I need to stop stalking it? Do I need to slow down or stop altogether and just give it a moment before it feels comfortable enough that I can begin approaching it again? That's not something that the intellectual mind conceives of. That's something that you feel out. That's truth. You feel it out. It's not going to be an answer that you're given by somebody. Right? If you explain to somebody this is how you hunt a butterfly, you have to actually go through the motions of doing it. You have to have the experience, and over practice you learn that, okay, if I go too fast, it flutters away. If I approach slow enough, there's a certain ease and grace about it, that it's kind of in this comfortable space, right? There's no rush on my part. I'm at peace, it's at peace. We maintain our peace, and I just slowly pause when I need to, and then eventually you have it. But you need the intuitive faculties to start working, and that only starts working when the mind, the smaller mind, the thoughts slow down, when they stop, when they lose their power, their hold over you, when they lose their limitations, when their scope gets bigger, when the possibilities increase. Only then can you really make use of your intuition. Can you really start to feel it out? I was talking to somebody and they were going through a really rough time, and I was like, did you notice that when you're going through that rough time, you were left completely alone? Like when you were in the depths of your world crashing around you, right? When you felt like everything that you've accumulated, everything you've worked hard for, everything that you've done your best for, has just completely fallen around you. And in that moment where you needed someone to talk to, there was nobody there to talk to you. What happens if you're in that moment when your world is falling apart and someone comes and talks you through it? They give the mind a reason, right? Some type of validation. They ease the mind. They numb the mind away to the point in which it's like, oh, that's okay, it's fine. It's a numbing. When you receive the validation from somebody else, it's like a numbing. It's a balm, but it's not actually treating the wound. It's not treating the root cause. When you're going through that intense period of your life, aloneness is necessary. You need that aloneness. When your world is collapsing around you, it's not so much that you want to find, right, when someone comes along, it eases the pain. No, it's more like you're figuring things out, right? Everything, your grasp on reality has completely been obliterated, and so you're trying to figure things out and build up something new. You don't need any extra input from somebody else unless, they're like a spiritual master. They're of enlightenment. But honestly, this is a moment in which you can really feel things out. When you can get a grasp of what reality really is, you can figure out what went wrong through silent contemplation. It's like, I don't know if you've seen those birds who like to collect a whole bunch of like really shiny, beautiful, colorful things at the nest. They usually do it to attract, someone else for mating. They're like, hey, look at me. Look at all these cool things I have. It's sort of like that's what we try to do, to accomplish happiness in our lives, is that we, accumulate all these different things, all these different ideas, these new concepts, new things that we didn't hear about before, and it satisfied the mind because the mind is always going to look for some rational thought, some way to explain away things. So if we can get a new idea and we can fit it into our old belief system, mash it down so it loses its meaning and then it fits into our old belief system, and then it's not truth anymore, it's just our own weird concept about truth. right? You're running around truth, you think it's a circle because you're running in a circle, but it's not a circle. You're just running in a circle. That's what it is. And so what happens is, you've accumulated all these things, and this is what Guruji's talking about with absorption and detoxification, is now what? Right? You can't leave the nest. If you leave the nest, somebody's going to take your stuff. That sexy bird down the street who has all those, females around him, he's going to come steal all your stuff, and he's going to get all the babes. Like, seriously, you can't leave that stuff. I mean, you have a lot of work for. This is your whole life's work. This is, everything that you've come to know to be true, and this is how you're going to attract your happiness. This is how you're going to make life good, right? Because you've known these shiny things, these, pretty things about life in the material world. This has been your concept of what happiness, success, prosperity, and abundance is. And because you haven't had an experience beyond that, you don't know what else there is. So it's harder for you to let go of that because you haven't had an actual experience beyond it. Once you've had an experience, an elevated experience to the next level, then this loses its value. But what happens? I mean, it's not so simple to just tell someone like, that's not what life's about, right? That's just going to make you more miserable. It's just going to limit you. Just try this. This is so much better. If they haven't experienced it, they don't know it's better. How can they just let go of that? This is why when divine, when God, when nature intervenes, it is a required step that whole nest you've created become obliterated. Right? All your shiny things are taken away from you. Because they're transient in nature, they will come and go as they please. Right? You can't hold on to what doesn't belong to you. It's not yours. So when this whole nest that you've created just falls apart one day, maybe the branch breaks and your whole nest goes. You have to build something new. But what happens is you leave the nest. You take flight. You experience flight. You experience something new. You go through the next level of your journey. But you get a taste that, that wasn't truth. Maybe this is. Because what I'm experiencing, right, it's new, it's scary, because, this was my reference point, this was my reality, and everything that I've come to know as what life and happiness is has been destroyed, and now I need to find some other source of happiness. So how am I going to find it? You start searching. You take flight. You feel it out. You go through different methods. You go through different people. You go through different teachers. You take an active part in your life. When beforehand you were just numb. You were just nothing. You were boiled down to just receiving things simply for the sake of entertainment, so that you could feel something, just creating more drama or taking part in other people's drama that you didn't need to take part in, and you know it. You know you didn't need to be involved in those other people's dramas, but you did. Because whatever reality you created for yourself, your own concept wasn't making you happy, so you had to take part in somebody else's to feel something else. And that made you more miserable because drama's never fun. But at least you're feeling something when beforehand you were just numb. You were just dead. You're just living in a dream day after day after day after day, going through the same motions, the same people, different faces, different names, same people, same activities, same old habits. All the motions are the same. You're never going to know what else is out there unless you abandon those old habits. But you have to involve yourself with something that conflicts the old habit. So that you can see the falsity of the old belief and the old habit. When there's something that contradicts, it proves its falsity. It proves it wasn't that strong to begin with. But the ego's nothing if it doesn't have desire and habits to hold on to. If you have habits and desires, it's easier for the ego to take root into your being and take over your life. That is your ego's shield of defense. Habits and desires, attachments to the world, attachments to old ideas, old beliefs, people, things. When those desires and those habits fall away, the ego's left defenseless. I mean, it's going to fight even harder than before. It's still not going to be easy. But that's the time in which it can be really, truly dissolved. This is essential. This is not an opportunity, per se. This is necessary. This is what will happen. Your choice is really dependent upon how fast it will happen. Right? Do you want to struggle for 5 years or every day of your life, as Guruji says? Do you want to die every day? Or do you want to get it all over with within a period of 5 years? What can you put up with? If you know if you can feel the truth that whatever's out there, it is beyond anything you've ever dreamt of. It is beyond expectations. It is a state of beauty and surrender beyond your understanding of beauty and surrender. If you at least can know that, isn't that enough? But you need the taste of it to know that it's there. That is why it's so difficult to do this without a real enlightened teacher. Because they can kind of give you a taste of the experience, of what it might be like. But really, in all honesty, it's just by being around that teacher, by witnessing them. I've heard this parable before, and I think it's just perfect for this example. It's when, these hikers, they're traveling up a mountain. There are 4 hikers traveling up a mountain. And the first hiker, they're all in a row, one after another. And the first hiker gets to, the highest peak of the mountain first, gets to a cliff. And the others are behind, and they're watching this hiker, and the hiker says, "Oh my God, wow, look at this. Like, this is beautiful, this is incredible, just, oh my God." And then they go over the edge and they disappear. So the first hiker, they reach that cliff, they reach that ledge, and they're just incredulous. They're amazed. They're just like, look at this. this is so beautiful, it's so wonderful, it's so incredible. And then they go over the edge, and then the other hikers don't see him anymore. He disappears. And so then they kind of look to each other. They're like, should we check it out? Like, I don't see him anymore. Like, that's kind of scary, but I don't know. Do you want to check it out? And so then the second hiker, he gets the willpower, and he's like, I want to see what that first hiker saw. Like, it was too good to be true, it seems like. I have to see it. I just have to know. And so then the second hiker, reaches the ledge, the cliff, and he also sees something. And he's just like, oh my God, look at this. It's truly incredible. It's so beautiful. It's so amazing. Just look at it. And then he disappears over the edge. He disappears over the cliff. And so then there are the two hikers left. Just kind of like, too down. But I mean, the first guy was pretty cool about it. The second guy just kind of confirmed the first guy's feelings, right? So maybe we should check it out too. What do you think? And so then the third hiker, follows after the second hiker's footsteps. He reaches the ledge. And he's incredulous. It's beautiful. Same reaction. Just, I can't believe it. I can't believe this is real. And then he disappears over the edge. And so then there's one hiker left. Right? There's nobody around him. He'd be like, should we go? Should we not go? I don't know. And there's nobody left to come back and tell them about the story, tell them what they saw. He's no reference point. He's nothing to go off of. But, he could see what they went through. He could see that through their experience that there was something out there, that there was this possibility, something truly beautiful, truly incredible there. So what do you think happened?
He walked up and over the edge.
No, he didn't. You know how I know?
Because you were the fourth person?
No. Oh. No. It's because we have this story.
Okay. Oh, there you go, because we have this story, because the person told the story.
Because if he went over the ledge too, then he'd have nothing to tell. But what that kind of demonstrates is, first of all, right, it's that confrontation, that experience of truth. It's not something that you can just explain to somebody. But you can kind of pique the interest in the others, right? Give them a level of awareness. Just give them the idea, the seed, that there is possibility, that there is something there, and it's better than what's over here, right? You just give them a taste of something beyond that. And really, the only way you do that is through example, by living that. Right? It's not something, again, that you read about, you teach, you write about, you explain. Because, again, you can't explain it. You can only show it by living through example, by being that. And then, for the very daring and the very brave, you have those who will follow in the footsteps. That doesn't mean that's the only cliff to go over. That's the only looking point. There are many. But you only really know about them when you see someone's reaction, when you see someone actually go over the edge. So you can see about truth by someone who lives truth. You can get a glimpse, a taste. You can know that at least it exists. When your very existence brings hope to others, I can think of no worthier existence. And when your very existence spells out new realms of possibility, new realities for others. Whether they make that leap or not, whether they go to the edge or not. Right? Guruji was talking about one of the stories of the Buddha and how, when he attained enlightenment, if you want to call it attained enlightenment, when he, was in that state, when he finally became enlightened, and he refused to speak. And then, there's a story of like all these angels or, beings who were like, you have to talk, you have to tell people about this. And he's like, what's the point? Why do I need to tell people about this? And they're saying how, some people are in the water, right? If you can imagine all of humanity, by the banks of a river, right? So some are far, far away from the river. Like you could say 5% are far away from the river, right? They don't even see it. And they may never see it anytime soon. And then there are those who are in the river. Or, right, their feet are touching it. Their toes are in the river. And then you have, that's another 5% of people. And then you have the 90% who are at the borderline. Right, they're at the banks, but they're neither in the river, nor are they back in civilization. Right? They just need that push. And that's what you're here for. Those are the people you are here for, is to give them that little push. There's no greater fulfillment than being that truth for someone else. Right? We were talking on the last workshop. Guruji was talking about how, the subconscious mind, has its own program that it runs behind the scenes. And if it, changes, how the conscious mind operates, because it's behind the scenes. It's not really in your awareness. It's something that kind of everything filters through, but you're not conscious of it. But it's become the essence of who you are in that moment. And that essence changes. Not necessarily the essence, but the depiction of that essence. And then he was talking about sacrifice. And I was saying, if you're really someone who sacrifices, right? Someone whose true nature is to sacrifice, right? That's who they really are. That is their essence. It's not a sacrifice. It's the people who feel like it's a sacrifice who don't have that quality of sacrifice. The people who feel like they're giving up something, or they're losing something, something's being taken away from them. But when that quality becomes you, when that truth becomes you, right? This is the whole, sunset thing, right? People are looking at the sunset and you can see the glory of it because you're not there. Because you're perceiving it, but you are not the sunset. You are distanced from it. You are separate. But the moment that you are that sunset or that sunrise, right, and that full glory and everything, you might not experience it or see it like others see it, but you are that glory. But it's difficult to explain because you're not in that state of perception where you can see like, that's magnificent, right? There's no sense of like, this is great or this is bad. It's just become what you are and that's it. It's simple. Everything is simple. So when you've actually reached those qualities, right? People can see it like they see the sunrise or the sunset. They can bear witness to it. They can be like, this person is compassionate. This person is love. This person is, sacrifice. This person is all of those beautiful qualities. And they can see it because that person is the living example. They are the sunset, they are the sunrise, they are the full force truth in your face. This is reality. But from that person's perspective, that's just who they are. There's nothing really significant or special about it. We perceive it as special because it just seems something far beyond us. Because it seems something so incredulous, right? So going over the mountain, we see the incredulous, the wow factor that all these other 3 hikers had ahead of us, going like, this is amazing, and then they disappear, and now you're like, should I go too? But then that's when fear grips you in that last moment. Fear. What happened to them? If I go to the edge, will I also lose my existence? Will I fall away? What will become of me? What will happen to all my shiny things? Right? A person who embodies those things, who is truly a part of that truth, right? Their love, their compassion, their sacrifice. For them, it's just what you do. It's just fun. It brings them happiness and joy, but it doesn't feel like they're, trying to be compassionate. They're not trying to love somebody. It's not an attempt to do something. It's not they're trying to be sacrificing. Right? They know that I really want this, but I'm going to give it to them because I want to give them something. I want to have less of something. I want to contribute to their... That's not like the whole thought process, because there's not really a thought process behind it. Because the self isn't there to really process the thoughts anymore, right? It's just, no, this is who I am. I just know that that person doesn't have that, and now they do. And it's not a lack thereof, because to have that feeling of lack, you need to have that emptiness. For somebody who lives in truth, right, it's that saturation. It's that $100 versus $10. Right? Somebody who embodies sacrifice and who actually does the deed. Right? It's like, you have a bank account with billions and billions of dollars, right? You have everything you've ever needed. You're fulfilled in every way. And, there's somebody who's coming up to you and saying, can I borrow $5? And you're like, just take it. You don't need to borrow it. Just take it. Right? In fact, maybe take 100 or something. And they're like, wow, they're so full of sacrifice. And it's like, there's no sacrifice there. I have everything. Right? I'm in this ecstatic state. I have the world. I have things beyond your dreams. You want to borrow some money? Like, there's no sacrifice there. Or at least there's no feeling of sacrifice. And in fact, it becomes more fulfilling because you see the joy on that person's face when they have that. When they felt a lack and they felt some level of fulfillment, as minute as it may be. You're like, wow, but you don't feel sacrifice, right? You did nothing to sacrifice. And in a way, you really did nothing to contribute to them. Because you come to a point when you realize it's not yours. So it's like, to give them that gift, you didn't own it, right? The sense of self is gone. All there is that divine, right? That truth, that reality, which is the ocean of eternality, infinity, everything. Anything you could ever need. There's no want. So when you give something to somebody else, it's like, you're a part of that too. Like, this doesn't belong to me. This also belongs to you. right? They're also a part of that divine existence at their core, right? The personality, maybe not so much, right? That's the thing that needs to face the trials and tribulations of life so that it can go away and you can truly live in that blissful existence of God, godliness, whatever you want to call it, whether there's God or not, God or godliness. Well, what can you give if nothing belongs to you? I mean, you're bare, your whole entire nest is gone. All the things you've collected are gone. There's nothing of you left. There's nothing that you're retaining, right? You've detoxified everything so that you can have everything. And I mean everything with a big E, capital E. But you've already gotten rid of everything. There's no sacrifice. There's nothing for you to give because there's nothing that belongs to you. But the people who describe those characters in other people have put a name to it. And they've called it sacrifice. They've put a label on it. They've created a structure around it. They've given it a meaning, a name, a purpose, a word, syllables, letters, structures, an idea, a philosophy. But the person who actually is that, they embody it, they encompass it. They don't witness the sunset when they are the sunset. So it's like when somebody witnesses that miracle in somebody else, that beauty in somebody else, right, they are the ones attributing those qualities to that person. That person is qualityless. And at the same time, full of those qualities because we've given names to them. So based upon our own reference points of how that compares to us and our lives, we've called those characters and what that person does a sacrifice. Because for us, it would be. And that's how you can assess yourself. That is probably one of the easiest ways to assess yourself, is through that interaction. Like I said, everything, you're interacting with the world through your own perceptual field, right? Based upon how you react, how you respond, right? Your thoughts and emotions that arise when circumstances change, when you attract new experiences. Right? That's who you are. Or who you've designed yourself to be. And like I said, the more you interact and the more that these old ideas, right, this old concept of self, these belief systems, these structures you've created, they're your structures. Nobody created them for you. So when they meet the bulldozer of truth, when they meet someone like Guruji, some enlightened being, whoever that may be, right, that person is always going to challenge their ideas. And they will never give answers. You never get an answer because an answer will only satisfy the question. When you're satisfied with the answer, you don't look for more. You don't seek more. When you're frustrated, when you're on the brink, when you're on the edge, when you're just gripping on by your toenails, and you're like, I need an answer. I need to know what this is. Nobody's just going to give it to you. God's not just going to come out and tell you. Right? It's not like a literal voice in your head saying, this is the meaning of life. I'm going to give you my secret. And then they whisper it into your ear. That's not what happens. I mean, who knows? It could be. It's experience. You need that collision. You need the world to fall apart. And then you'll build up a new structure with a little less of it next time. Little by little, pieces have to be taken away. Chunks have to be taken away. It's a detoxification. It's like, we're talking about your blood when it's full of drama, of all these nutrients. Like, it's not necessarily beneficial. Even though they are the healthiest, the best nutrients. Like, you have vitamin D, A, B, right? You have, calcium, magnesium, whatever minerals and vitamins that you need, that, the body requires to sustain itself for good health, right? But when you have it in excess, when your blood is filled with it, and there's nothing you can do with those things, right? The body has to now spend the energy, right, to expel it, to get rid of it, because it's too much. It doesn't allow room for growth and change. No matter how good the nutrients are for you, there's too much. Your body can only absorb so much. You have to expel old ideas, old thoughts, old beliefs, old relationships, old desires. And I'm sure now you can understand why Guruji's so frustrated when people respond to one of his questions with, "I believe so." Because that's doubt. They don't have enough faith. They haven't gone through that experience with truth. Even though it's right in front of them, that person hasn't been able to let go enough of their old beliefs, their old thought patterns, all the things that they've become attached to and dependent upon, because that's how they've lived their life and they don't know anything different. To let go of that would be to let go of their whole life. So they've clung to these beliefs. And even though they know it's not working for them, right, or it's conflicting with what he's saying, the point of the confliction is so that it will fall away, it'll break apart, whether, one belief, one idea is more true than the other. Again, that's not really the point, because the truth isn't conveyed through words. It's the experience, direct experience. And you can't experience it until something falls away, no matter how good it is, or how bad it is. Right? The good and the bad, they're both bad. Right? We are limiting ourselves. There's no real chip on his shoulder. But you can understand from somebody who lives in that truth, for them to say, look at this view, it's so incredible, it's so amazing, just come to the edge and look over it, and somebody's so ingrained in what they think has been working for them, Or they're so fearful. They are so afraid of abandoning that. Abandoning something old, even if it doesn't work for them. Right? They're not happy, obviously. That's why they're here. To begin with, that's the very reason they're here, because they know there's something more, or they're not happy. They don't want something to happen in their life. They're suffering in some way. They're struggling. They want some relief. They know there's more. They know there's ecstasy and bliss beyond comprehension. Because that's why you're here. But for someone to still hold on to it due to fear, or just pure ignorance, you can understand the frustration of somebody who sees the truth, who lives it every day, who's always in that state, and for them to say, trust me, there's something better. That's not it. Can you just look at me and trust me? Follow me? Stop trying to lead the way. You don't know the way. You're not happy. Why are you trying to pretend you're happy and lead the way? You're not going to turn out to be happy that way. If you don't have happiness, you can't lead someone to happiness. If you don't have sacrifice, you can't teach someone of sacrifice. If you don't have the qualities of love, you can't teach someone love. It doesn't exist for you. You can't transfer it to them. It's something they cultivate in themselves. This is the hardest journey you'll take. And it's a journey you have to take alone. But by the grace of God, certain periods throughout history, on this phenomenon, we get glimpses of what truth really is. We get some sort of reprieve, some grace. You don't expect grace, but when it happens, boy, should you be grateful. And boy, should you take advantage of it. You don't expect miracles in your life. You don't expect your prayers to be answered. But if for some reason along the path they are, don't waste another moment. Don't be like, maybe next lifetime. I get to watch it now, and maybe next lifetime I'll actually get to take part and do something. Right? Why wait? Why hold on to things if you know you're not happy, if you know you're confused, if you know you're struggling? Right? What's the harm in letting go of an old idea? What is the harm? If you're already miserable, if you're already unhappy, what's the harm? What's the worst thing that could happen? If you realize it was a mistake, you can still go back to the old idea if it's working for you, or pick a new one. But why would you continue down a path with the same old thoughts and ideas, just holding on to them because some part of you says, I have to be important enough. Nobody's important. Your ideas aren't important. Right? That catching the butterfly, you need that calmness, that stillness. You need to be in that zone. right? You need to be detoxified from all these old ideas. You can think of ideas and thoughts as kind of like these radio waves, these radio signals that everybody's constantly emitting all over the place. Right? If you have a still mind, right, you're not projecting anything. You don't have any radio waves signaling out. Right? You're not shaking the bushes or stirring up the leaves, right? You need that complete stillness to grasp truth. The intellectual mind cannot understand truth. It's not something that can be intellectualized. Because it's beyond intelligence. But if you lived your whole life thinking intelligence is the most important quality about you, this is coming up for a reason. If you've lived your life thinking that your intelligence is one of your best qualities around you and about you, that this is how you've gotten to where you are today is through your intelligence, what happens over time? All of these things are transient. Beauty is transient. If you think you've gotten through your life because of your beauty, that's going to fade. Old age happens. It happens to everybody. So does intelligence. Intelligence fades when you get older. You start forgetting things. You don't remember things. Right? Your mind's not as sharp as it used to be. Right? All of these things that you feel like have led you to where you are, and I'm assuring you that they haven't. But if you've attributed so much importance to these things that you don't want to let go of your old beliefs and ideas because you're like, but this is me. I am intelligent and I am beautiful. Like, this is how I've gotten to where I am. This is how I met my husband. Or, this is how I've gotten my job. This is how I've gained my security and my hold on life. But if there's ever one consistent thing about this world, it's that everything is transient. And they will come and they will go. What happens when the beauty's gone? What happens with the intelligence isn't as sharp as it used to be? What happens in the workplace when there's a new intern who's just a little bit brighter than you are? Just a little bit more together, a little bit more sharp-witted. You sure enough are going to lose your importance real quick. If that was your basis of happiness, if that was your basis of reality, if that was what you've defined your life and you've grown dependency upon, you have to know that it's not going to last. And what do you have to fall back on? I'm not talking about fall back on another job or fall back on another, purpose, another meaning in your life. I mean, fall back on what will be your new source of happiness. I mean, guaranteed that wasn't really bringing you happiness. But if that goes away and that was what you derived, excitement and life from, what do you have to fall back on now when that's gone? This destruction, it's a part of living in the phenomena, right? It's the creation, preservation, and destruction, right? New ideas are created. You try and preserve and hold on to them as long as you can, and eventually they're destroyed. And then you cry. And the point of that process isn't to make you suffer. The point of that process is to say that you were so fixated in one state of mind that you didn't realize that there were so many other states of mind that you could exist in. Right? Enlightenment is everybody's, natural evolution towards enlightenment. It's a natural process, right? The only thing that matters is how fast do you want it to happen? But as part of that process, naturally, just what nature does, you just watch nature. Nature is the greatest teacher. Right? You see the creation, preservation, and destruction in nature. That's happening in your life as well. And it's not just a physical thing as in your body or your belongings, things that obviously can be destroyed, but it's also the things that can be destroyed within your own mind, within your own heart, within your own being. It's those things as well. Those things are as much a part of this phenomena world as are the physical, as are, chairs and volcanoes in the ocean and the environment. Those things exist just as much. Go ahead and tell me that they don't. You're living through them, you experience them, you interact with them every day. Tell me they don't exist. Tell me you don't get emotional when someone yells at you. Tell me you don't get reactionary. Tell me you don't get upset if, your husband or your children stop talking to you or they're not involved in your life anymore. Tell me that doesn't have an effect on you. Tell me that relationships don't come and go. Why does this happen, right? If you're in this world, right, and the point is just to experience the world, then why do things fall down? And why do you have to get back up again? Why do you have to rebuild? Why does this destruction happen? It is for your evolution. It is for your highest good, for your highest purpose. It is to increase your awareness. It is to develop your perception. It is to bring you to new heights that you never felt before. This is where you need faith. No. Right? That's where faith is developed, is through the intuition. Right? Because we know beliefs are rooted in doubt. Right? With one belief, it's a requirement that other things can't be true. You have a belief, so this is true, and as part of the requirement for that belief to be true, other things cannot be true. How does that work? If I believe I'm a human, I can't be a dog. But what's the difference? Belief is still rooted in doubt because there's still this essence of this is what there is and there's nothing more than that. And anything else that contradicts that, I will reject. That's what a deep-rooted belief does to you. Is when you're so involved in that belief, you will willingly reject or throw away any other idea, any other belief, anything that conflicts, that proves that, it's maybe not all it seemed to be in the first place. Right? You will create more beliefs, more fictions, more stories to support this belief because you didn't want to let go of that belief. And the whole idea of having a belief means that there is some void there, some part of you, some absence of rational thought. To have a belief means that there is some leap of faith involved. And if you're leaping, right, you're traveling over a chasm, a void of nothingness, right, there's no way to be 100% sure if that belief is correct. How do you know? But faith is when you've truly experienced reality, when you've had a taste, when you know, right? You know the sun's going to rise tomorrow because it rose today, and it has risen for the past 28 years that you've been on this planet. Right? With that leaves no room for doubt. Faith has no doubt. But the moment you put up a belief, you stop the learning process. If you're so ingrained in a belief, you stop the journey of self-examination and self-discovery. Right? If you have a belief that, this isn't a chair, it's a table. Right? That's my belief. That doesn't make it true. That doesn't make this chair a table. But if I believe it's a table, but then someone shows me a table, I have to make up a story for what that is. Because I want so much in my being, because I've become so dependent upon this story in my life. I've become so in need of this being a table, and if it's not a table, then that means a lot of other things that I've perceived must not be true either. Right? The story of my life is going to fall apart and disintegrate before my very eyes, so this has to be a table. I can't be wrong. I have to be right. But then when somebody shows you what a table is, and you're like, that's a chair, right? You have to create a new belief, a new fiction, a new story to compensate for the one's faults. So what happens is, if these structures don't fall down, if you don't take pause and go like, maybe that belief was actually wrong, and try and figure out, well, is it really a chair? Was that person correct? Like, how do I know what a chair is? And then you start examining the world and, getting new ideas, new concepts of, oh, chairs can look like this, chairs can look like that, tables look like this, tables look like that. Okay, I'm, with full confidence now, I could say that that is in fact a chair. Because through my experience on sitting on other chairs, experiencing other chairs, reading about, looking about it, right? Through my full involvement with this experience, I can tell you that that is now a chair. This whole time I thought it was called a table. But the moment that you reject a contrary belief, because you are so insistent, because this is how you were raised, and maybe in your mind, mental definition that is a table, but everybody else has come to call that a chair. And if you want to come to an understanding, if you want to come to a clearer idea of what the rest of the world is about and what people are talking about when they say I sat in a chair, you have to understand what a chair is. Once you understand what a chair is, you can understand all sorts of chairs. It's like once you've gained the ability to problem solve, once you've gained the ability to prioritize, once you've gained the ability to become organized, right, you can use that new quality, That's become a part of you in different aspects of your life, right? You don't need to, relearn organization for your closet and then relearn organization for your fridge, right? As long as you understand, you've become integrated into the concept of what organization is, how it works, right? You've really learned it. You've experienced it. You've gone through the motions. You understand it, right? This is now your quality. This belongs to you. Right? It's become who you are. You are an organized person. You don't need to relearn that quality to have organization in different areas of your life. It is something that you retain with you always. That's what truth is. It's something you retain. It becomes who you are. And you can apply that quality to every aspect of your life. You can apply it to your relationships. You can apply it to your business, right? They say there's nothing unspiritual about making money, right? You can apply it to whatever you want. It's you. It's a part of you. It is your quality. Truth is called truth because it's real. It is the one sure thing that you can know and believe, more than believe, have faith in, that will always be there. No matter how often the world fails you, or you fail the world, the truth will always be there. It will always be available. It'll never go away. It is the nature of existence. God isn't truth. Truth is God. Love is God. Right? To say that God is love is to say God possesses love. But God doesn't possess. God is. When you truly experience love, right? People are always talking about, how can I know God? How can I experience God? How can I experience truth? It's the actual experience itself, or lack thereof. To know love, you know God. To know truth, you know God. To know beauty, you know God. It doesn't work the other way around. This is the most incredible, most beautiful, wondrous gift that we have. Is our ability to detoxify, to cleanse, to expel, and to build something new. I mean, we live through the energy of creation, right? We can create. We can destroy. We can live in love, happiness, and beauty all the time. But as you are now, you can't do that. The old you has to fall away. And the only way you can really teach that to others is by living that, by living through example, by showing others that truth is out there. And it's better than anything you're holding on to right now. Way, way better.